All right, what's up, Sin Network family? Hey, my name is Jamie Lamato, and I'm on the equipping team for the Sin Network, which is all things training and coaching. And I have the distinct honor of introducing your breakout leader, Dan Sueza. Dan has been married to his wife, Amber, for 16 years. Dan is the planter and pastor of Connect Church in Calgary. He and his wife Amber made the move from sunny Florida to snowy Alberta in 2015 after discovering a call to Canada while on a short-term mission trip. Their church launched in 2016. Additionally, Dan and Amber are voices behind the New Church Hustle podcast, which is all about helping you dream big, do work, and not quit. His latest episode was particularly helpful, and I can't recommend it more to you. His Instagram account is also a must follow. So without further intro, put your hands together in your office or in your living room for breakout leader Dan Sueza.
Oh my goodness, man, what an intro. Can I get you to follow me around and just hype me up every single place I go? That would be absolutely incredible, Jimmy. Thank you. Appreciate that a whole lot. And thank you to those of you guys who have tuned in today. I am super excited to dive into some incredibly practical things when it comes to intentional ministry during the COVID season. We got lots of great theology and content and inspiration from the main sessions. And I hope that today is really practical. It inspires you and you walk away from our hour or so together with a whole lot of fresh creativity, ideas, and just a desire to go accomplish big things for Jesus during this season. Now, we are going to end the session with live Q&A. And so if you've got questions about anything that I say or questions that you have about ministry during this season, you can actually type them into the chat box there. Jamie will be monitoring them and we'll answer them or at least address them to the best of our ability live when we get done tonight. Now, as Jamie mentioned to you, I spent a lot of time in Florida before my wife and I moved to Canada. And one of the things that's true when you live in Florida is that you go on a lot of cruises, okay? I don't know if you ever have been on a cruise before. It's one of those things that I did not think I would enjoy at all. Being trapped on a boat seemed like a miserable way to spend a vacation. And then I did it, and now it's one of my favorite ways to travel. I can't wait until they open borders back up so my wife and I can go on another cruise. There are a lot of reasons to like them. The buffet is one of them, but my favorite thing about cruising, and one of my favorite things in the entire world, is to go up onto one of the top decks, to stand near the railing and to look out across the ocean. If you've never done that, from the middle of the ocean, looked out across the sea, it is an incredibly powerful experience. It makes you feel small and maybe a little insignificant. It's pretty amazing. Now, the ocean is way deeper than you realize it is. It's a lot more chaotic and turbulent at times. And like I said, it's just, you have this sense that, man, I am somewhere foreign. I am somewhere out of my element. This is kind of weird and pretty amazing too. Now, even when the ocean is very calm, it's actually interesting for another reason. There are no road signs on the ocean, right? There are no mile markers. There are no signs saying, hey, Puerto Vallarta is this far ahead in this direction. There is no reference point whatsoever for you as a passenger while you're on a boat in the middle of the sea. And that can be very disorienting. It can kind of make you feel like you are adrift. You don't know where you're going, how long it's going to take to get there. You feel like you're just being brought on this journey, but you have no control over it. Now, of course, the boat is not adrift, is it? On the boat, while all the passengers are completely clueless, the average person has no idea what's going on, there is a person up on the bridge called the captain. And the captain of the ship always knows where he is. The captain of the ship knows exactly where he's headed. He's very intentional about everything that happens on the ship. He's looking ahead while everybody else is looking around, right? He's in control when people are lounging by the pool and eating their fourth piece of pie. And it's only because of the captain's intentionality and his leadership that the ship is able to arrive at the next port. Now, look, this comparison between the passengers and the captain of a cruise ship is really almost perfect to the circumstances that we find ourselves in right now during the COVID season. We are in the middle of a situation and a life circumstance that is foreign, and it's scary, and we're all feeling out of our depth. Like the pandemic has made the world very turbulent, and there are no obvious road signs pointing the way forward. I don't know about you, but I was never trained to pastor in the middle of a global pandemic. Thanks, Bible college. I thought you were going to prepare me for everything. Apparently not. So we have no idea where we're going in a real sense, and it can become very easy in this moment to begin to think like a passenger instead of like a captain. As the leader of a church, it can be easy to say, I don't know what we should do, so we're going to scale back. We're going to do the minimum that we can to survive during this season and hope that once this pandemic passes and we get back to some sense of normalcy, then we can regain our momentum. Then we can try to move forward and conquer ground for the sake of God's kingdom. But can I challenge you to remember that no matter the season we find ourselves in, we are not called to go with the flow. We are not called to simply ride this thing out and hope for the best and trust that maybe we'll get safely to the other side of the shore. If we allow ourselves as church leaders to do that, then we are going to lose momentum and we will start to drift from the mission and the direction that God has called us to go. So, my challenge for you today is to get really intentional about the ministry that you're doing during the COVID season, to maximize the opportunities that are in front of you, and to believe that although this is an uncertain time, and although none of us were really prepared for it, God is opening up unique doors of opportunity for your church and for your ministry to conquer ground and to do things that would have never been possible under normal circumstances. So let's start with this question. Ask yourself and answer honestly, because you're not sharing the answer with anybody. No, you're not going to turn to your neighbor or anything like that. Have I been thinking more like a passenger or a captain during this season? I know when all of this first broke out and we had to move online and give up our in-person services, I was thinking like a passenger. I was hoping we would just hang on tight and survive and maybe get through this season. But God has really begun to open my eyes about these unique opportunities. And so if we can acknowledge the ways in which we've kind of taken our hands off the wheel and let our ministries drift a little bit, perhaps then we can regain some of that focus, momentum, and direction. All right, now in order to do that, what I want to talk to you about today is getting really intentional in 4 areas of your ministry at your church, 4 areas that we want to be super laser intentional about. We want to be intentional in our services. We want to be intentional in our shepherding. We want to be intentional in our staffing and intentional in our self-care. We're going to cover those 4 topics and dive in deep on quite a bit of them. If you have questions again about any of these, drop them in the chat feed and I'll do my best to address them along with Jamie's help when we get done here, okay? So what does it mean to get intentional with our services? What does it mean to take advantage of the opportunities in front of us during the COVID pandemic? Well, before I answer that, I actually want to define the problem and the opportunity that lies in front of us right now, okay? The situation or the circumstances that we find ourselves in, the predicament is that reach is up, but engagement is way down. You know this is true. You may not understand exactly the words yet, but we will in just a moment. Reach is way up, but engagement is way down. On the one hand, our message has never been more accessible to the rest of the world, right? Than it is right now. We have the chance to spread the good news throughout the internet all over the world. It used to be that people had to come to our church during this very narrow 1-hour window during the week. And if they weren't there, then they basically missed out on everything that happened in our ministry. And, you know, there could have been some other like opportunities sprinkled throughout the week, whether it's small groups or service opportunities and things like that. But if we just got really honest for a moment, under the old pre-COVID model of ministry, we were usually reaching dozens or perhaps even hundreds of people each week. But now that we've been forced to go fully online with our services, our reach, the opportunity we have to present the good news, the gospel to people has multiplied exponentially. There are more people from a more diverse set of locations that are engaging and participating in our online ministries than ever before. I'm sure that you guys can point to some people in your church whose friends or family members, they had never been a part of your in-person services, but something has shifted. Maybe it's because of the life circumstances or the pandemic, and people are looking for meaning and safety and community and things like that. Maybe they just didn't feel comfortable walking into your church. I don't know what the deal is, but I think you can all point to people who have begun to engage with your church for the first time since the pandemic started. Our reach is way, way up. We're experiencing this at Connect Church here in Alberta. Back in January, when we were having Sunday services, we were running about 350 people in person, but now that we've gone online, our services are reaching thousands of people each week. And I get it, like those numbers don't always mean what Facebook wants you to think they mean, and we'll talk about that. But our reach is expanding far beyond what it was when we had 1 or 2 services on Sunday morning. Our services are after parties, our church's after parties that we have after our Sunday morning service. They're basically like Zoom calls where 12 or 15 people jump on and they, just chat and kind of fellowship and things like that. And in these after parties at Connect, we've had after parties where 4 or 5 provinces are represented in that one Zoom call, which is really cool because it wouldn't have happened if we were only meeting in person. Like when you've got somebody joining from Nova Scotia, many of you don't even know where Nova Scotia is. It's like east of Maine. It's like way, way out there. And so it's great to see the reach of our ministry to expand so far. Our ministries are growing wider right now with very little effort. But on the other hand, our engagement is down. Okay, so our ministry reach is growing wider, but our engagement is dropping. And on the surface, it looks like, according to our video metrics, that our services are reaching numbers of, in the thousands of people. But then, like, when you dig in, the average watch time of a church service right now is less than 10 minutes. If you've got a 45 or a 60-minute online service and the average person is watching less than 10 minutes, they're not engaging very much with what's going on. Many churches have experienced a decline in their giving. There's been a bunch of research that's been done right now that says that Christians feel less connected to God and to their church family than they have at almost any other point. And so while our ministry reach, the breadth is certainly there right now, the depth is actually something that is going to be a struggle. We've seen this in our small group ministry. Last year, we had 25 small groups meeting around the city. And since the pandemic broke, we've struggled to get like half a dozen of them going consistently online. Reach is up, but engagement is way, way down. What this means, and then we'll get into the practical stuff, I promise. What this means is that during this season, your church will likely drift towards width, but lose its depth if you're not careful. What I can be very, very tempted to do is to say, look at all these new people that we're reaching. How great is it that friends and family and new people are tuning in and things like that? And to say, that's good. We're succeeding. We're accomplishing our mission. But you know what? The mission is evangelism and it's discipleship. It's breadth and it's depth. It's reach and it's engagement. And so what we want to do is we want to work as hard as we can to increase the amount of engagement. You're gonna have reach. That's gonna come naturally from moving to a digital platform. But then the struggle is gonna be to making sure that you've got the depth of engagement to match the reach that you've built. So let's start with talking about getting intentional with our services, okay? Intentional with our services. And I'll remind you yet again, if you've got questions about anything I say, or if you wanna ask a question about COVID ministry in general, drop it in the chat. We'll address it when we get done in just a little while. Intentional services. I think if you want to have intentional church services in this time period, you have to embrace digital church, not just endure digital church. Come on, some of you guys right now are groaning. You're like, oh, I know that's true. Some of you are amening because you are really excited about the opportunities at digital church. I think we've got to embrace digital ministry and not just endure digital ministry. Here's the truth. Digital online church is not a temporary band-aid until we get back to in-person services, okay? This is not like the stopgap measure until the virus is dealt with and then we can go back to normal. Even after we go back to normal, we are going to be expected to provide a robust online presence for people within and without of our church. And especially during the transition time where we can start meeting in person, some of you are there right now, but people aren't quite yet comfortable with it. We've got to make sure that we have this healthy, effective, and fruitful online ministry. Now, look, I'm not saying that digital services and digital ministry doesn't have some severe deficiencies. It really does. But what I think we're going to do in this season is the church is going to learn to have digital experiences that translate to embodied ministry. I think that's the goal. Digital experiences that translate to embodied ministry. We have to be able to take our online service and then show people that while online is wonderful and it can help feed their soul, it can lead them into a deeper sense of community and commitment to Jesus' kingdom. So this is our call, this is our challenge right now, to develop digital experiences that translate to embodied ministry. And let me just say this, you cannot be effective with a medium that you resent. You cannot be effective with a medium that you resent. I know it's awkward. Guys, it is so awkward for me to talk into this camera right now. Apparently Siri is turned on my earphones, and so she keeps popping up on my computer over here and talking to me. And like, it's just weird. There's all this stuff that I was not prepared to deal with. I know it's hard, but if you resent it, if you say, man, I hate Sundays, I hate preaching this way, I just want to get back, you are going to miss out on the opportunities God has in front of you. So don't resent this season. Don't simply endure this season. Embrace it to the very best of your ability, because digital ministry is here to stay. Now, some other good news that comes along with this is that we are now enjoying a level playing field that has never, ever been present before, okay? At this moment in history, basically everybody is working with the exact same equipment, the exact same restrictions, even like, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about churches, whether we're talking about media. I mean, consider Saturday Night Live, right? What are they using? Zoom calls in order to make one of the most popular shows on the planet. Think about John Krasinski's web show, Some Good News, which just sold for like some insane amount of money. What is it? It's an iPhone on a tripod and him talking about positive stories, right? Jimmy Fallon is doing his show from home, and instead of having title cards and lower thirds, he's literally holding up a piece of paper that his daughter drew with a crayon on. I mean, it's like everybody is working with the lowest technology possible. Another cool one that just popped up is that Essence magazine. They, in their last, this is a physical magazine, but they actually put a photo that was shot on an iPhone as the cover picture. I mean, the stuff that you have around your house right now is quality enough to produce Saturday Night Live and Essence magazine. That's pretty exciting to me. And you think about mega churches. I love mega churches, man. You guys do amazing, wonderful ministry. Thank you so much for leading the way in what you do. But there are a lot of big churches that have $10 million facilities and LED walls that I wish I had. And you know what? They're dark right now. They aren't able to use them either. Here's the truth. I'm just going to bare my soul to you because I can't see your face. A lot of times in the past, I have said things like, you know, If I had those kind of resources, if I had that kind of money, if I had that building, oh, if I had him on staff, oh, if I had her on staff, of course, Connect Church would be influential and big and powerful. All I'm missing are the right resources. COVID has stripped the lie off of that. And now the content that you and I create rises and falls on its own. If you make good content, it doesn't have to be slick. It doesn't have to have the highest production value in the world. If you make good content and it's at least watchable, then people will watch it. Now, on the technical side of intentional services, intentional online services, there are really three areas that you kind of have to have right: audio, video, and lighting, right? Those are the three things that you're seeing right now. You're seeing me on video, you're hearing me talk to you, and of course there's lighting so that you can actually see my face, okay? So when it comes to this, I think most churches get it wrong. Most churches think that video is the most important thing. And so we need to run out and buy a Blackmagic camera, and we need to have the fanciest lens on it and things like that. That's not true. Out of those three, audio, lighting, and video, the most important thing for you to focus on is actually your audio. I know that sounds crazy, but if you have poor audio, people simply won't listen, even if you look really crispy on screen, okay? So get your audio dialed in right. Then have decent lighting, and lighting doesn't have to be like a fancy, electronic LED camera light or anything. You can literally just face a window and open it up, and you'll get some good light that will shine and illuminate your face. It doesn't have to be expensive. And then just take your iPhone, put it on a tripod, and talk to people if what you say is helpful to them, if it helps them to engage with God and grow deeper in their faith. People will watch. So with your online services, think in terms of audio first, then lighting, and then worry about video last. All right. If you've got somebody on your staff and they're like, we have to buy this new camera, don't fall for it. You don't have to do that. Okay. All right. Now, look, you also have to know, if you want to be really intentional, maximize your services during the COVID season, you have to know that your audience behaves differently at home than they do at church. Your audience behaves differently when they watch your service at home than when they are in your building. When people are gathered in your auditorium or your gym or your community center, they are a captive audience. They can't go anywhere. They have to sit there for the duration because they don't want to be rude and get up. Of course, they could go to sleep or they could play on their phone, but the reality is there's so much social pressure from the people around them that they generally won't do that. When they're in person, they'll laugh at your jokes. They'll say amen. They'll sing along with your worship. At home, the vast majority of people will not do any of those things. Heck, guys, I don't do those things. I don't always laugh or say amen or sing or anything like that because it's weird when I'm here by myself. It feels so forced and strange. I can't feed off the energy of the crowd. Nobody's controlling the lighting to create a vibe that leads me to want to participate without feeling like I'm in the spotlight. I don't have a distraction-free environment. Some of you guys have kids and they're like, I need another bowl of cereal. I've got dogs that are like, take me out. There are all these distractions that are pulling our focus away from what is happening on the screen. And then you've got a lot of people who are going to be watching your church services, not live at 10 a.m. when it premieres on Facebook or YouTube, but they're going to catch up later. And so maybe they're on transit and they're watching the service as they ride the bus to work in the morning. They're not going to sing along with your worship songs in the middle of the bus. Maybe they should, but they're not going to do that. We have people at our church and they watch the services and their break room on their lunch break. And guess what? They're not going to be like, hey man, brother, come on. They're just not going to do that. And so the audience behaves differently in person than they do at home. And that means you have to work with the reality you have and not the reality that you wish you had. Okay, so my final point here before we move on from intentional services is one that I am only starting to recognize the power of right now. Okay, I think churches should be taking their creative cues from other places than churches. We shouldn't be looking at other churches for our cues about what to do when it comes to online video delivery. Okay, so think about it like this. Churches have spent years perfecting in-person large crowd gatherings. Nobody on earth does these in-person, inspirational, life-changing gatherings better than churches do. On the other hand, vloggers, video bloggers like on YouTube and things like that, they've spent years perfecting the talking head video. These in-person services that churches are so good at, they are at their best, and they make the most sense when there are lots of people in the room and you can control everything that's happening in the environment. But when it comes to video blogging, the content is made to be consumed by one person watching a computer screen on the go. It is very, very different. And so who do you think is better equipped to thrive during the COVID season? It's vloggers. They're the ones who are doing this right, or they're the ones who at least have a leg up. And I think the church needs to start taking its creative cues from them rather than just trying to copy what every other church is doing, or to simply port what our services looked like when we were meeting in person and to simply just port it online. So what is it that YouTubers know that the church needs to learn? I told you that they're ahead of us and we need to learn from them. What do they know that we are just now learning? I think it's this, that when it comes to effective online videos, the pace and the density of content has to go way up. The pace and the density of content has to go way, way up. When you sit in a theater and you listen to a pastor preach, you're listening to all of the nuance, the breathing, you're listening to the pauses. It can be dramatic. There's a lot of room behind it. But when you watch YouTube vlogs, they are edited in such a way that it is like rapid constantly, right? Maybe you've seen this. I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not. But if you watch a YouTube vlogger, they actually edit out all of the space in between their sentences. They cut out their ums and their ahs. They actually edit out all those breaths. That way, the pace of the video never slips, because here's the thing. The reason that people are only watching our videos for 8 or 9 minutes at a time is because they watch until there's some sort of lull, somewhere we lose their attention, and then they click away and go find something else to do. YouTubers have been incredible at making sure that the video pace never slips, so people don't have a natural point to kind of walk away from. The other thing that they do, and I think churches, if we're going to continue with online ministry and be super effective at it, the other thing that they do is they have a density of content that simply isn't possible when you're live and in person. So what I mean by that is it's not just the video of somebody talking. Quite frankly, you guys, this is all boring. I'm telling you right now, if I were one of the 30 or so people that were watching this, I'd probably tune away at some point, because an hour to listen to one bro talk is a long time. But if we start taking our cues from YouTube, then we can really make our videos a lot more dynamic and engaging and draw people back in. So we use, or they use, things like voiceover and B-roll footage. They use sound effects and music beds that goes under, while you're speaking portions. They use simple sound effects. All of this is like another little snap. Hey, pay attention, guys. Watch this. You're missing something cool that's happening right here on the screen. So at Connect Church, we've been really researching and thinking through this for the last several weeks, probably 6 weeks or so. And we decided with our new series that we just kicked off last week that we were going to follow the YouTube model instead of the mega church model. Okay, again, nothing wrong with any large churches or any churches that are killing it in the online space. We just decided, let's try and see what happens. Let's follow their cues and see if we can translate them to a digital service. So what I've got here is a 60-second clip from our last sermon. This is last week's church service. When people tuned in on Facebook, this is what they saw. And Heather's going to roll the video for you, and I think you're going to see some of what I'm talking about.
James uses a bunch of metaphors to describe the power of our tongues, our mouths, and our word. He compares them to the bit in a horse's mouth, to the rudder of a large ship. He compares it to a tiny spark that can cause a huge wildfire. He compares our tongues to wild animals, uncontrollable, untamable. And he compares our mouths and our words to venomous snakes. Whew. I mean, that might seem kind of dramatic. That is, unless somebody is spitting their verbal venom on you. It might seem like an exaggeration or a little dramatic unless harsh words are destroying your marriage or lies are eroding trust in your office. In those circumstances, doesn't seem like James is exaggerating much at all.
My big fat mouth gets me in trouble.
Okay, there we go. So you see a little bit there of what I'm talking about, where the pace of the video is much more rapid even than what you're seeing right now. We're using other visuals besides just my very goofy looking face on the screen, sound effects, all that sort of stuff to create more interest and engagement. The idea is we want people to stick around and watch the video for as long as possible. So when we compared this week's service, where we followed that style, to last week's service, the numbers were incredible. So our old traditional service, you know, the old one from 2 weeks ago, where it was just me preaching for 25 minutes into the camera, right? When we did that, we had about 120 1-minute views on Facebook. So 120 people watched at least 1 minute of that video. That's not very good. That's less than half the number of people that were actually attending our service in person. So I was a little disappointed with that. We went with this new format where we started taking our cues from YouTubers instead of other churches, and we had almost 800 1-minute views. We had a 7x increase in the amount of engagement because we changed up the pace and the content density. Even if we just look at the broadest reach, right? Our video was served up 2 weeks ago, the boring service, to about 2,000 people. A little under that. But this one was served up to more than 10,000 people. So we had a 5, 6, or 8 time reach just because we started taking our cues from other places besides churches. People were intrigued by that, they found it engaging, and they watched more of the video. Now you might be saying, and we're going to wrap up here, you might be saying, damn, that's great, good for you guys, I guess, but I don't know how to do any of that stuff, okay? I'm not a video editor, I don't know anything about vlogging, couldn't tell you who Casey Neistat is, that's just not me. That's okay, doesn't have to be you. I didn't know anything about this stuff either. When I was doing video devotionals just a few weeks ago, it was like, behind a beige wall, and it was gross and boring and ugly. And then I started watching YouTube tutorials about, like, how do you make the background look a little bit better, and how do you get people to stay engaged with your content. There's so much good information out there that if you want to learn, if you want to maximize your online presence, you can, and you can do it by taking your cues from places other than churches. So if you want to have really intentional services during the COVID season, you should embrace digital ministry. Don't simply endure it. Enjoy the level playing field. It really is a game changer. Recognize that your audience behaves differently at home than they do in person, and then take your creative cues from places other than churches. All right, intentional services, we're done. Now let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about intentional shepherding. How do we shepherd people well in the middle of a very unique set of circumstances? Well, I would encourage you first to think of yourself as a shepherd to your community, not just to your congregation. You are a shepherd to your community and not just to your congregation. Yes, of course, your primary ministry is going to be to the members and to the regular attenders. We want to make sure that we take good care of them. I think most churches are going to do that pretty well. But because of COVID and because of the current protests that we're seeing all around North America and the rest of the world, we have an opportunity to speak like Jesus and to love like Jesus that has never been present in my lifetime and arguably in a few generations. Now, social distancing and stuff like that, definitely it's creating some hurdles, but it also creates some pretty cool opportunities. In my community, and I bet in yours as well, people are hurting. They're hurting emotionally, they're hurting spiritually, and they are experiencing even physical needs. Canada is a really wealthy country. There isn't a ton of poverty, and usually people don't need physical needs like food and clothing and shelter met. But since COVID has happened, there has been a huge door open for us to provide groceries and do all sorts of stuff like that to people who are in need. So think of yourself as a shepherd to your community and not just to your congregation. You guys are going to think I'm so arrogant for what I'm about to say, and I don't mean for it to be this way, but like, this is just the conviction God has given me, that when I'm out in public now and I see strangers, people I don't know, I think to myself, I'm their pastor, they just don't know it yet. I am their pastor, they just don't know it yet. One of these days, they're going to call me their pastor, and I can't wait for that. I just assume when I see people out on the street that there is nobody else in the world that cares about their spiritual well-being. They don't have any other voices that are pointing them towards Jesus. And so if we go back to our ship metaphor that we used in the very beginning, these are like passengers overboard, and nobody else is coming to rescue them. And so it's going to be us, or it's going to be nobody. I want to start thinking of myself as a shepherd to the entire community, to have a passion for every single person that's breathing in my neighborhood, to know that God loves them deeply and we can reach them with God's help and with the right set of intentionality. Okay, so here's what I think we've got to do. I think we have to focus in this season on meeting their needs and then trusting that our needs will be taken care of. We focus on meeting their needs and our needs will take care of themselves. See, this is the tension that I experience as a pastor right now. Like, oh man, how aggressive should we be in ministry and spending? How conservative should we be, because we don't really know how things are going to go? We had an okay month financially last year, but is it going to be worse next month? Maybe we should just pull back and wait this thing out. That's the passenger mentality that we talked about earlier. No. I'm the captain. God has said, hey, Dan, Amber, I have called you to under shepherd my church, to under captain this ship and lead it where I want it to go, even in the middle of very rough seas. And so instead of pulling back, I'm going to go further. I'm going to meet people's needs to the very best of my ability. So what I suggest is to recognize that Jesus has called us to mission, not preservation. Jesus has called us to mission and not preservation. Your desire, natural inclination, maybe even my sinful response right now is going to be towards preservation. Instead, Jesus calls us to mission. If you're worried about finances, then meet people's needs, and I believe God will supply the financial resources that you need. If you're worried about your flock being scattered, then meet their needs, care for them physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and they will regather. I mean, if you don't know what to do in this crazy season, then just focus on serving the people inside and outside of your congregation. And I just believe that we will make progress while everybody else around us is treading water. Malachi calls the church the storehouse, right? He says this is the storehouse and we're supposed to bring our offerings into it. And the purpose of the storehouse was best illustrated in Genesis 41 and 42. When Joseph was wise enough to save up grain so that when the famine happened, all the surrounding nations came to the Israelites in order to get what they need. The church is the storehouse, and this is our opportunity to give from what God has blessed us with, and so that we can meet needs, serve the community, and make a difference. There have been a lot of unique things that churches have been doing, some at our church, others that I've just stolen because I thought they were great ideas that somebody came up with. When we're talking about meeting physical needs, man, I know of churches that are giving thousands of dollars of groceries every single month to families that have been impacted by the economic or the physical, the health fallout of COVID. I know churches that are stocking up on PPE, masks, and hand sanitizer, and they're providing it free of charge to medical clinics or to people who have compromised immune systems. Our friends Andy and Christy Cass up in Rochester, Minnesota, they gave away 1,000 pizzas to the teachers in their city because they knew that teachers were experiencing a great deal of weight and frustration and heartache over what the COVID season has brought their way. We meet people's physical needs, and yes, that'll cost us a little bit, but who cares? God's going to take care of us. We're going to keep reaching. We're going to keep serving. We're going to keep giving because that's what Christ did for us. We're going to meet people's spiritual needs. Some of my favorite pastors right now are jumping on Instagram in the evenings. They're just going Instagram live and they're saying, hey guys, I'm here and I'm ready to pray for you. If you've got a prayer request, drop it in. And then he prays for them right there. That's such a good idea. At Connect Church, we've just started posting everywhere we can in our city. If you want a Bible, we'll give you one. Free, no questions asked. Somebody will drop it on your doorstep. You don't have to talk to us. We don't have to you don't have to pay us. We'll just give you, we've given away dozens and dozens of Bibles in the last few months because we believe that the scripture is one way to care for our neighbor's spiritual needs. And you can always do these daily devotionals, man. Just fire up your iPhone, give people a bit of encouragement, 90 seconds every evening or every morning. This will help to keep them spiritually full, spiritually connected, and to recognize that you are there for them even when you can't be there with them. And of course, we want to meet people's emotional needs too. This is where your church gets to get really creative and fun. People want like a bit of normalcy. People want to be able to, be close to their family and have some good memories in the middle of a season that most of us just kind of want to forget. And so, we're focused on meeting like creative needs. Like at Easter, we did Easter baskets. We were giving away free photos. We called them portraits for Mother's Day. And in Father's Day, we're doing a contest where people dress up like their dad and they post it to social media. That's meeting the emotional needs, good memories, positivity during this season. I just believe if we'll get focused on doing that, then God will meet all the other worries and needs that we have in this ministry season. Final point I make about this, and then we'll move into our last two, and they'll be much shorter, I promise, is that small groups are more important than ever. Small groups are more important than ever right now. Digital small groups, you may be able to start to transition to hybrid groups where some are digital and some are in person. That's where we're at right now. But I think these groups are more important in caring for people and developing people than they have ever been, right? Virtual community has its shortcomings, but virtual community is always better than no community. So let's get people plugged into virtual community. One of the things that I've loved seeing is that there are a lot of people who walk around before COVID and they're like, yeah, I'm an introvert. I'm antisocial. If I could go live in a cabin by myself, I would do it. That would be incredible. And now they're like, I miss people so bad, right? Because we're not half as antisocial as we think we are. We are wired for community. And as churches, we are the organization. God ordained us to give people healthy community. And so this is our time to shine. You've got to put all of your effort, all of your eggs into the small group basket. Do everything you can to get them going strong. And here's the cool thing. When we're talking about the season that we're in, we have opportunities with small groups that we've never, ever had before. For example, geography is no longer a problem. And so, we have a small group at Connect Church. And in this small group, we have people from our church in Alberta and people from another congregation in North Carolina. And even though we're separated by all this distance, we actually get to help and serve and disciple one another together. It's such a great opportunity. We don't see the obstacles, we see the opportunities in front of us. So intentional shepherding, think of yourself as a shepherd to your community and not just your congregation. Meet their needs and trust that your needs will take care of themselves, or better put, God will meet your needs. And then remember that small groups are more important than ever. Give me 5 or 10 more minutes, guys, and we're going to blow through these last two, and then I'm available to answer any questions that you have. Drop them in the chat. Jamie Lamato is monitoring that, and we'll do our best to help you in any specific way we can. If we're going to be intentional at ministry in this season, we've got to be intentional with our staff. intentional with our staff. Now, when I say staff, I do mean paid staff, yes. But look, if that's not your situation, if you don't have paid staff, I'm also talking about your most key volunteers, the people who would be staff if you had the money to pay them. This pandemic has created an all hands on deck kind of moment. And my fear is we're going to be so busy, like pumping out our Sunday services and trying to chase people down and minister to them and meet all the needs in the community, that our staff are going to get lost in the shuffle. And so I don't want to overlook them. I want to make sure that I invest more into them during this season, not less. I want them to know that they are valued way more than I ever have before. I would never, make them feel unvalued or devalued intentionally, but I just think there's so much fighting for our energy and attention and resources right now that it can happen without our recognition. So if you've got staff or your volunteers who function like staff, man, give them gifts right now. Buy them something kind of cool, and say, look, I just want you to know I see you, I value you, and I'm here for you. If the church can pay for it, great. If you got to do it, it's worth it. I promise you. Care for their spouse and their children. Staff make so many sacrifices, and their families often suffer as a result. And so we've got to make sure that the families feel valued and loved, because their contributions are making the staff's presence in ministry possible. Give them public celebrations. Give them a few extra days off. Who cares about vacation in the middle of a pandemic? Let them have some extra time off. Take good care of your staff, because good staff are going to be working really, really hard for you right now. They're going to be serving Jesus with all of their heart, and we want to honor and recognize that. Now, we want to also help them know whether they're winning, whether what they're doing is accomplishing the mission. And so in this COVID season, you might consider recreating job descriptions and expectations so that they know exactly what you expect of them each and every week. Uh-oh, my light's going crazy, you guys. All right, hopefully that doesn't happen again. Do that. And, don't just focus on their duties, focus on your values, focus on the things that drive your organization, and teach and reinforce your values to your staff, because this will help them to understand why their ministry is so valuable, and the sacrifices, okay, we're gonna shut this off. The sacrifices that you're making are so incredibly important, okay? So yes, do everything you can to pour into your staff during this season. Now, as I mentioned, great staffers are going to be working full bore during this season. If you see that your staff members are working too much and they're burning out, or they're compromising their family, or they're not taking good care of themselves, then it's your responsibility, if you are their direct report or the lead pastor, to pull them aside and to say, hey, I love you and I love your commitment, but I care about you too much to let you work this much right now. We've got a rule at our staff when we're here in our office space. If I come in on my day off, I want every staff member to say, what are you doing here? Because I can come in and do some work. When they show up on their day off, you better believe the first question I'm going to ask them is, hey, what you doing here today? It's your day off, go home, don't be here. If you just got to come pick up your sunglasses, cool. But if you came to answer email, get out of here, because I want you to be refreshed and full and ready to do ministry. This is another way that we can be intentional in this season by caring for our staff to the very best of our ability. One more category we'll talk about, and then we'll open it up to your questions. This is the shortest one, but arguably it's the most important. We want to be intentional with self-care. Intentional with our self-care, intentional services, intentional shepherding, intentional with staff, intentional with our self-care. Listen, you should have reestablished biblical rhythms, including a regular Sabbath by now. I know, just like me, when COVID hit, we went into full sprint, panic mode. We were freaking out, trying to get all this stuff done, doing our very best to, pull everything together and to keep it from falling apart. And man, was it a lot of work. But we've been in this for 3-4 months by now. And your pace and the amount of work that you're doing, it should have settled down. Listen, if you're still running at the same pace now that you were then it wasn't a season, it's your status quo. You can sprint for a season, but you can't sprint for the status quo. You can't sprint forever. And if 4 months in, you're the one who's still doing everything, you're carrying all the weight, you're working 70 or 80 hours a week and not spending time with your family, don't have a day off, you're gaining weight, whatever it might be, then you have to stop and evaluate, because you can't keep that up long enough. You have to be able to establish these biblical rhythms, including having a regular Sabbath for yourself. And in fact, you have the responsibility of setting the example for your congregation and for your staff. They are looking to you, if you're the lead pastor or, above them on the org chart, whatever that means, they're looking to you and they're taking their cues from you. And so you better be showing them what it looks like to have healthy rhythms, even in the middle of a very unhealthy season. I would encourage you also have some fun with your family. It breaks my heart how many people I hear who are like, I'm so sick of being locked in the house with my kids and they're driving me crazy and I can't wait until they go back to school or I go back to work. And it's like, you're never going to have this opportunity again. You're never going to have the chance to be as close to your kids or your wife or your husband or whatever as you will in this season. So don't let this opportunity, don't let this moment pass you by. Rather, take full advantage of it. Have some fun, create some amazing memories. Listen, the COVID season is going to be a story that you tell for the rest of your life. Don't you want that story to be about how your family thrived, about how you guys grew closer together as partners, about how your kids made you laugh so hard? Focus on having fun and building memories with your family. Don't get so busy with the season and the uncertainty that you miss out on that lovely, lovely opportunity. And then the final thing, guys, just surrender what is out of your control. I have no clue when we're going to be able to have services back in person again. I don't know if it's going to be like it was. I have no idea. I don't know if I'm going to get sick. I don't know. There's so much that is way outside of my control. The government's making decisions that are impacting what I can do. God, of course, makes decisions that impact what I can do. People in my church, same thing. There's so much that's out of my control. So what I want to do then is surrender, just release the things that are outside of my control and to trust in God's goodness and his sovereignty, and to believe that even though I'm not in control, there is a captain on the bigger bridge, and he is steering the ship in ways that I can't even fathom right now. I can trust him. I can follow his leadership. I don't have to have the answers for everything. Those are my thoughts, you guys, on intentional ministry during the COVID season. Intentional with services, intentional with shepherding, intentional with your staff, intentional with your lighting, and intentional with your self-care. Now, I just told you I don't have a bunch of answers, but I'm very glad to answer questions. So I'm going to turn this back over to my man, Jamie. Jamie, if we've got any questions, you and I can talk through them. I know you've got a ton of wisdom too, man. I'm interested to hear what people have written in. Jamie, you around, man? So I would answer your questions, but I don't have, oh, there he is. Okay, I don't have access to the questions, so we'll let him. No, it's okay, buddy. Yep.
Hey, Dan,
The
this is
network
Debbie.
was like kicking me in and out. So
Okay,
here we go.
Yeah.
There were with a medium that you resent. So loved it. That was a great point. What are some thoughts that you have on helping older congregations engage with online services?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, some of their reticence and hesitancy is simply unfamiliarity. I was born in the 80s. I'm Gen X. I'm not actually digitally native. I grew up without all the tech, but I learned a lot of our older folks, they never really learned, or they didn't learn certainly to the level of fluency that we might have. And so some of this is vision casting as the lead pastor. So you're constantly telling these senior saints, these beloved servants of God, hey, look at the chance that we have to reach people. Share the wins, tell the stories of people that are tuning in from across the state or across the country, and help them to see that this is not a net negative for the church, this is a net negative. And quite frankly, it is the future of the church as well. Now, some of their reticence and hesitancy may simply be because they don't know how to engage very well with the technology. They may not know how to make sure that, you know, they can play it on full screen or cast it to their TV. They don't even know that's a possibility. And so as the pastor, get to know them, their circumstances, situations well enough that you can help them over whatever technological hurdles they have. And from there, it is literally nothing more than vision casting and showing them that this is the next move of God for the future. And we get to be on the bleeding edge of that. How wonderful.
That's so good. That's such a helpful insight. I heard about a church who was sending their tech people to older people's houses to help get their Wi-Fi set up. So
Brilliant.
I think there's so many things that we can do. There are some quick hitter questions, and I think they're kind of more related to services as well. What are your thoughts on live stream versus recorded?
Yeah, so I think you should, on Sunday mornings, you should pre-record. And there are a few different reasons for that. One is, and Jamie, I'm gonna throw you under the bus, man. When you're live, you are subject to the whims of your internet service provider. So if the video drops, you lose your audience. But if you pre-record and upload, you can still upload it as what YouTube and Facebook call a premiere. And that premiere function means you've already recorded, you uploaded it on Friday, it's already stored on Facebook servers. There's no chance that that thing isn't going to play on Sunday morning at the right time. And because you've scheduled it as a premiere, which is just a little checkbox when you're uploading the video, you get all the features of a live video. So everybody who follows your page gets the notification. You get the live chat. You get all those fun emoji reacts and things like that. To me, I don't think there is any reason under the sun that a church should be doing a live like not pre-recorded, but a live Sunday morning service. Now do live stuff throughout the week. Hop on with your iPhone and do a live prayer time or a live devotional, or, you know, show people around what you've got going on at your church office or at your home or something like that. There is a place for genuinely live videos, but it's not Sunday mornings.
That's so good. Such a great answer. How about corporate singing? Does that translate to online?
Oh man, okay, so some people are gonna get mad at me here. My wife leads our worship ministry. She's incredibly gifted. She's on the other side of this wall here, and she's phenomenal. I love her, the band she's created, the worship that they lead us in. We have together decided that for online services, we're not including a singing component for worship. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is my personal take, and the people that I've talked to, is that the majority don't actually sing. They may appreciate having the music in the background or watching even what's going, but they don't participate vocally in the singing too much. If that's the case, and we know that there are a good number of people who simply don't connect with singing or vocal worship, I'm not sure that I want to force my audience to sit through 8 or 10 minutes of singing that they wish they could skip. Because if somebody does that, again, please don't misunderstand, like, musical worship is so incredibly important. It's near and dear to my heart. I want it. But if I put it in my video and people can't skip ahead and they don't want to be a part of the singing, they're going to leave, and they might come back and they might not. So what we've done at our service is we don't have any musical worship that happens during our actual video, but in the description, we've created a YouTube playlist, and each week, one member of our worship team curates the songs. So they'll choose 2 or 3 or 4 worship songs. We'll put it in there and say, hey, Cassie Manuel decided to choose these songs. Go check them out. They're going to help you experience God and feel closer to him through music today. And then people have the opportunity to do that, and they can go back to that playlist multiple times throughout the week. They're not going to be able to go back to the video and watch the recorded worship.
That's so good. That's so good. This next question is how could we design a service that speaks to a person the next day, right? So
Mm,
we're used to services being on Sunday, but the next day, maybe they work on Sunday and
yeah.
they're at work on Monday, and on their lunch break, they're gonna be a part of this curated service that is focused from YouTube. How can we focus on the person the next day and them not feel like they've been left out?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question, and something that in the moment right now I'm realizing, wow, I don't know that we've done what I'm about to say, but we're going to start doing it this week. Acknowledge those people when you're pre-recording. So thank you for joining us. If you're watching on Sunday, man, we are glad you're here. Jump in the chat, leave your comments and emojis. If you're watching later though, we want you to hear that you are just as much a part of our online experience as anybody is. So you can still comment, you can still text us, you can still give, you can do all the things even if you're watching it on Tuesday. That way we're normalizing the fact that people watch this throughout the week on their own or rewatch it. And then of course, whatever content we're creating on Sunday, it needs to be something that's applicable to Monday as well. And so, you know, I think if we can do those things, that will help to ease some of that, just normalize it a bit.
That's good. And you did an amazing job talking about focusing on mission versus preservation. What would be a hack, a tip that you would give for your listeners today, the people watching, on some ways that they could focus on mission over preservation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the main question is how do we get away from our camera screen? How do we get away from our offices in our homes? What can we do to be present in our community during this season? Like again, you know, we pre-recorded all the content that took place at this virtual conference earlier. We can say, because we're live now, like the protests that are going on right now, like without taking any sides whatsoever on anything, there is an incredible opportunity to be serving your community, whether that's prayer walking, whether it's cleanup, whether it's serving, you know, water to the protesters or to the police or to both. Like there are all these things that we can do. And I think it's going to require us to say, okay, we're going to do really great online services where the lights don't go crazy. You guys, this is killing me. We're going to do this great experience, but this is just the appetizer. The meat and potatoes of our ministry happens out in the community Monday through Saturday.
So good, so good. Last question.
Okay.
Self-care. Self-care. You talked really briefly about self-care. What are some ways that helped you get out of those first few weeks of nose to the grind and really get back into healthy rhythms?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a control freak. And so like when we would film our services and then I would do all the edits, I would do all the copywriting, I would upload it. And it was just like, it was taking a lot out of me to do all that, but I couldn't bring myself to give it up. So my wife said, you know what, we've got a kid in our church and he's going to school and he's studying film and TV production. Why don't you let him do at least the editing? You can stay in charge of recording and writing content stuff, but let him do the edit. And I did. And frankly, I wasn't always happy with the choices he made, but you know what? I gave away responsibility and that freed me up. Now that was 6 or 8, I'm just gonna turn this off, you guys, I'm sorry. 6 or 8 hours that I didn't have to worry about doing that sort of stuff anymore. And that meant that I could focus on other kinds of ministry. So I think the first thing is gonna be to give away as much ministry as you possibly can, find somebody who can do it at an acceptable level, and then let that go. And then ultimately, I think you've just got to learn to say no to yourself. Like, I don't need to do this. It's okay if this doesn't get done this week. The church is not going to collapse. The kingdom of God is not going to fail. We're going to do what we can, and then we're going to know when to shut it off so that we don't allow ourselves to get too far out of balance, even in the middle of this very pressing season.
That's so good. My friend Mark puts it this way. He says, change of pace plus change of place equals change of perspective.
Come
And
on, dude, that's so good. Will you say that again? Because I need to write it down or record it or something. That's good.
absolutely, he says change of pace. So we've all
Uh-huh.
been given that, plus change of place
Mm.
equals change of perspective. And
Yeah.
man, I just think that's what I hear you saying in all of this is, well, whether it's services, shepherding, staffing, self-care, we all have this moment to step into. And I just thank you for sharing with all of the watchers, listeners, even today, and those who will watch it later, right? Picking on what you said earlier, those who are
Yeah.
watching later, that they would maximize their ministry during the COVID-19 crisis. So thanks, Dan, for sharing with the Sin Network today.
My pleasure, Jamie.